both grew up in a Dublin suburb called Blanchardstown in West Dublin. I guess it's a low to middle income neighbourhood or area. Our mum was a nurse, and she actually came from a full family of nurses. And our dad was a small business owner. I guess it wasn't until I went travelling after college that I started to think about inequality and social injustice around the world. I was in Cuba, Guatemala, and then lastly, and probably most importantly, Cambodia. I couldn't get it out of my head when I came home of these inequalities and the people that I met, and just how there was such extreme poverty and extreme wealth living side by side. And when I came home to Ireland, I kind of realised that a lot of the aid agencies were kind of really big and kind of all focusing on hunger in Africa, as they've been doing since I was 4. I just realised there was a bit of a gap in the market for kind of a small, more inclusive organisation, and one that kind of made a connection with young people, especially young people that were coming back from travelling. You know, if they came back and they're like, oh, I came across a pretty cool project, I want to get involved, and that they didn't experience. What I experienced was when I went after the bigger guys, they didn't reply, they didn't want to know. That's where the need or the want to set up an organisation came from.
Well, my background, as soon as I left school, I went travelling to South America and Australia and Southeast Asia. And then I came home and started working in bars, construction jobs, just anything I could get my hands on. So yeah, I was kind of stuck in a rut career-wise. So my girlfriend at the time was an occupational therapist and suggested that I start working in care. So got a job in a dementia ward in Blanchardstown, and then started working with young people with emotional behavioural difficulties. And then after we broke up, I went to Africa. I was volunteering in Uganda with an AIDS clinic, and I travelled around Ethiopia, Somalia, Kenya, and again, yeah, just saw the absolute state of those places. So yeah, that just kind of coincided when Andy set up the Scoop, and so I helped Andy out with that. I was delighted to help. But Scoop has always been kind of Andy's baby, India and Cambodia. So Syria and Iraq were places close to my heart, so that's when I decided to set up the Syrias Vibes Campaign last year.
Many moons ago, I remember setting up 8 years ago now, and it was quite tough. Then it was under the management of the Revenue Commissioner, who was based in Tipperary, and again, it's like ringing the tax office, you know, they didn't care. And it was just jumping through hoops for about a year until I remember just calling on the phone. I was actually in Belfast collecting art for a very first art auction. And this gallery was donating 6 pieces, and they were about to give 6 pieces, and they were like, oh, we'll just take your CHY number. I was like, oh yeah, I've got it here. And I just called up the office in Tipperary in Nina, and I was like, listen, I've jumped through the hoops here for a year, I've done everything you want me to do, like, can we just get a number? And that's how I ended up getting it there and then. Why it took so long was, so our first board was like myself, Calvin, Connor, Dave. So Connor was a promoter, he was managing a club in town. Dave was an artist, and then when we set it up, he said, look, we're going to be running club nights, we're going to be running art auctions, and they came back saying that there's a conflict of interest there, that, you know, someone who knows how to DJ can't play at an event because he might get money or he might get future work. I thought this was archaic, I thought this was mental. And I said, well, look, we're all in our 20s and we all just, like, we want to give our skills to raise money, like, so what's you just can't have a board. There's another pitfall or another obstacle, is the board. That's just been a bane since the very beginning. We've never cracked having a constructive board. It's always quite negative. It's always just kind of a brainstorming session, like a think tank, and nothing ever goes anywhere. So a year ago, we just decided to kind of not bother with a board, and it's been one of the best things we've ever did. So basically about a year and a half ago, we decided just to focus on fundraising, to, you know, forget about volunteers, to forget about policy making, just because it was so stressful without the money. If there was no money and you're having these meetings where people are talking about grand plans or resources to come up with a policy, it just makes things more and more stressful. especially when people are planning to spend the money that you've raised, and you're like, well, I want to send this money abroad to build this school, and they're like, oh no, we need this policy, we need to get on this code, and we need to tick all these boxes, and it just ends up sucking up so much money and time and resources. So kind of when Calvin set up Syrias Vibes, that's kind of when the focus towards fundraising happened. It was like, well, if we want to make an impact in Syria, we need serious amount of funds, considering for Scoop our average annual turnover is about 70,000 to 100,000 on a good year. So we're like, well listen, if we want to make a big impact in Syria, we've got to up our game with our fundraising for sure.
I went to Syria in February of last year, 2016, and set up the Syrias Vibes Campaign. It was a Just Giving campaign, so it was just an online kind of fundraising platform for people to send us money. And while I was there, I was working for Havasora Kurd in their rescue centre in Kamishlo City, and then towards the end I was out in the front line in a field hospital and back with the rescue service. So I guess, I was kind of on the ground, sending videos, photos, stories back to Ireland through Facebook, and a lot of people were engaged in it. We weren't really getting that much money until the boy in the back of the ambulance, Amran Daknish, I think in Aleppo. So I think that touched a lot of people, and we had a serious surge in donations after that. It was perfect timing as well, because Havasora Kurd, it's a big organisation, but they've no money, no funding, so they were pretty much on their last legs funding wise, because they don't get funded by the Syrian government. They rely on the Kurdish diaspora in Europe mainly. So it was a nice injection for the guys, and then after I left we just decided to keep going. So yeah, we had a good kind of media campaign when I got home to get the story out, and I was looking to try to get back into Syria this year. So I went to Iraq and was on my way back into Syria, but in my crossing point there was a massive airstrike, so my permission was revoked. But in this trip I was planning to go to a camp called Bajed Kandala for internally displaced people, Yazidis mostly, because I met, there's a Swedish heart surgeon called Namam Ghafouri, who I met in Manbij. She was running 17 tons of aid into Manbij while the city was still under ISIS control. So I liked the cut of this woman's jib, she had sand. And yeah, after I met her, I thought like I really want to help this woman with her work. So I spent 5 weeks in the camp in northern Iraq, and just trying to figure out what they needed, what the people needed. So there's people who are coming back from captivity, maybe 5 a week, and they have very little to come back to. So yeah, we decided to set up a psychological support program. So we've hired a psychologist from Dohuk, and she's going to see 25 clients every month. Yeah, I suppose we just want to expand on that, maybe get another psychologist or 3 and keep going. I suppose in the last days of the Manbij operation there was a lot of kids coming in. We had there was a people carrier came in with 6 kids and an ISIS fighter. So it's in Havasora's mission to provide healthcare to everybody regardless of who you are. So this ISIS guy came in and his arm was half blown off, and so there were 6 beds in the hospital. So we got the 6 kids in, started treating them for blast wounds, and we put the ISIS guy on the floor, and he was really high on Captagon, which is a drug. I think it's like speed or something, but most of them will be on it. It keeps them up for days and gives them courage and all that. So he was on the floor just tripping and going crazy. So we had to take them to Kobani Hospital. So we piled them back into the people carrier, and took us about 50 minutes to get there. And then when we got to the civilian hospital, there was just a queue of jeeps full of people. So I was holding one of the kids, shoving him into the hospital, and there was just hundreds of people in there lying on the floor, blood everywhere, people just lying there with no legs. And I was trying to get the kids in, so the doctor said that he didn't have room for the kids, that I couldn't take them in. So I put one of the kids down, and then nearly had a fight with the doctor, so we were screaming at each other, and he agreed to take them. So yeah, very stressful. And then we had to take the ISIS guy to another hospital, a secure hospital where there's guards, because after they get fixed up, they get processed and convicted if found guilty. So yeah, that was quite a bizarre situation for an Irish lad to get involved in. The Yazidi genocide was on the 3rd of August 2014, so a lot of women and kids were kidnapped and sold into slavery. Some of them ended up in Turkey, some of them ended up as far away as Saudi Arabia, but most of them ended up in or around Raqqa in Syria and Mosul. So I went to my first out call, and there was 2 boys aged 8 and 6, and they'd been sold to an ISIS family in Mosul. And then when Mosul started to get a bit hairy, they moved to Ankara. So the family got wind and managed to contact this family, so they bought the 2 boys back for $8,000, I think. So they'd only returned 3 weeks before I got there, and when I got there they didn't speak Kurdish anymore. Kurdish is the Yazidi language, Kurmanji. They didn't have a word of that. They only spoke Arabic and Turkish, and just completely brainwashed into the ISIS way. Because I guess when ISIS are educating kids, like doing maths, they don't say, it's 25 divided by 5. It'd be, I have 25 rounds in my AK-47 and I shoot 7 infidels twice. How many rounds do I have left? So that's how they learn maths. So yeah, it's quite crazy. And they were taking photos of the boys, so the Kurdish symbol is this, so they were trying to get the boys to do this, and they were doing the ISIS thing of this. So it was just very bizarre. And I saw a video of another out call that I didn't go on myself, but Dr. Naman went on it, and it was a boy who just got back 3 days ago, and the kid was nuts. He had a toy gun that he wouldn't let go of, and he was just running around the house like Allah Akbar, like shooting his family with the toy gun, and then he was taking the clip out and putting it back in and doing all this and shooting the family again, and then he'd go over and start slapping his mom, and the dad, like, he was just on his phone, just like, I don't know how to deal with this, I don't know what to do. And then Dr. Naman went over and tried to sit him down, and again, this kid didn't speak Kurdish either, and then he just started kicking her and slapping her, and so yeah, there's nothing in the way of psychology or counselling or reintegration to help these kids get back into their society. So I think that's why we're starting this program.
We're always looking for people to get involved. We're quite a small little outfit. It's practically just Calvin and myself, and then we work with volunteers, usually online. Funny enough, works pretty well actually. I think it just, maybe I'm not so good face to face with people, but this is working really well. Finding people online, and we have a new cookbook coming out, which was completely created by volunteers. That's coming out at the end of July. It's pretty special. We have a new website that was completely done by a volunteer as well, lady in San Francisco. Developing a new donation platform at the moment. Hopefully soft launching that in September. A couple of events in the pipeline. Hopefully running a gig with Keela in the Tivoli in September, and then hopefully doing a gig on the 1 year anniversary of the launch of Syrias Vibes last October. That we're hoping to do a gig in London this October. So yeah, plenty going. So we look for people to help out at events. For example, we ran a pop-up dinner with Airbnb last week, and we had 5, 6, 7 old friends help out at that, finding their inner chef or their inner waiter or their inner toilet attendant, I don't know. It was amazing though, just how people will actually get involved and help out. We also like to collaborate with a lot of people as well, so with artists, photographers, web developers, graphic designers. We have so many ideas and so many initiatives and so many things in the pipeline, that we just want people to reach out and volunteer. I know I said we don't work with volunteers, but that was more for the schools. We don't send people to India anymore because they need long-term, like minimum 6 or 7 months. It's really hard to do in India. And then with Cambodia They run their own volunteer program, so if anyone does get onto us saying they want to volunteer, we just put them straight in touch with the schools. But yeah, so we love working with artistic types, I guess, because the arts and events are the backbone of our fundraising anyway. So yeah, Calvin has been working with psychologists. A lot of people have mailed us on the back of our campaign to find to fund a psychologist in the refugee camp on the Iraqi border. So 3 or 4 psychologists have actually come out of the woodwork. So that's great as well. Probably won't send them abroad, but we'll take resources, or we'll plan the program with them. I like to think our mum, that it must have stemmed from there somewhere. Yeah, because mum, when I was a child, she was a paediatric nurse, and then when I was in college, she was working in a nursing home. So she's kind of seen it all, and never unwilling to get her hands dirty. But also I remember, so we lived on a main road near a roundabout, and any time there was an accident, like a motorcycle or a car, mum would be the first person running out there, you know. We were in a car crash a few years ago as well, and even though she was hurt in the car crash, she was climbing out the window, and it was like
climbing in windows,
6-car pile-up, and she was straight out looking after everyone, and
she had cancer at the time as well, so
yeah, and she was the last one to leave in an ambulance. She made sure everyone else got in an ambulance, and then I think the last paramedic was like, "Are you okay?" And then she realised her back was killing her, because she hurt her back, major whiplash. She was very selfless and very Christian. You know, she wasn't religious, but she was Christian for sure. You know, she treated people the way she wanted to be treated. She treated people with respect. She helped those that need helping. She liked to drink. So it must come from something like that.
Yeah.
Mighty for me is doing as much as you can with what you have. You know, I think
I'd say the same as well.
Yeah, we're kind of entering a really nasty age now of a war of words, you know, retaliation with bombs, and the pursuit of greed is ruining so many lives and destroying so many countries, but it's not going to go away. It just seems to be getting worse and worse. So I guess a mighty person is someone that can look at that big picture and go, something's not right here, and that we all have to do our little bit. If we don't have much, it doesn't matter. Make someone a cup of tea. You know, if I have a tax haven in the Cayman Islands, maybe I should think about reverting that towards charities or something. You know, I feel there's definitely enough people and enough money and enough cop on the planet to make a huge difference to everyone, but we just don't seem to be doing it. I feel like we're going to be doing this for another 20, 30 years, so hopefully in 10 years time we literally are changing the world. But right now I like what we're doing. It's micro project based, it's grassroots, it's through personal connections. Like we get solicitations from emails asking for people to give us money from time to time, but I like how, you know, we didn't have to come up with this massive program and how we pick our projects, which I've been to conferences, and that's always the big question, how do you pick your projects? And it's like, we go out there ourselves and we find them ourselves, we let them touch us. That sounds weird, but we emotionally get connected, and then when we come home we continue to support. And again, there's no real blueprint for that, there's no real, you know, policy. It kind of just happened that way, and it's happened for a reason, and I like it, you know. I think the connections we have, the partnerships we have, and the plans we have are all very encouraging, and this is only the beginning for us. So we'll keep going and keep growing.